Instrument on the Nova-C lander for this IM-1 mission is the Lunar Node 1 Navigation Demonstrator, also called LN1. That's much simpler. It's similar to when you use GPS to get to a destination. Let's take a look at how it works and what it will do to help support future surface and orbital operations.
Lunar Node 1 is meant to be a demonstration of how we can use various navigation technologies to figure out where you are in and around the moon. I'm holding in my hands the Lunar Node 1 mass simulator. We use this build to test out our vibrational modes, put on a shake table, and also do fit checks with the lander itself. Inside of our payload, we have multiple electronics boards that fit within this chassis that is a little bit about a half U in size. You can see our external connectors here where we have our data and power to the lander itself. And within here, we have multiple boards that do the power regulation, our data control, our FPGAs, all those kind of electronics pieces are in here, as well as a small S-band radio that attaches up underneath this top radiator in order to distribute this heat, and then to talk to the antenna, which mounts here. This is the same size and build as the flight payload. It's just not covered in MLI or some of the other materials that you'll see on the flight build itself.
Now, IM-1 is the second launch of a lunar lander under NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative. The first CLPS launch was with Pittsburgh-based Astrobotic. The mission was called Peregrine Mission 1. It successfully launched last month on a ULA rocket, but afterwards, Astrobotic reported a failure in its propulsion system, which prevented the spacecraft from landing on the moon. 10 days later, Peregrine burned up after re-entering Earth's atmosphere. An anomaly review board will release its findings to what happened once complete. Joining me now to talk about NASA's CLPS initiative and its benefits and risks is Sandra Connolly. She's the Deputy Associate Administrator for NASA Science. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Megan.
So talk to me about some of the key takeaways as NASA moves forward with commercial lunar vendors.
Yeah, so the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program is super important to NASA. It really is transforming our method of doing business. It's leveraging industry's emerging capabilities of actually providing end-to-end service for us. So rather than us having to build our own, we can now procure it. And it's not only, we're not the only customer. Other government organizations, industry, academia from around the world are all going to procure these services. And there is risk associated with it, though. So we recognize that as we're evolving this capability.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask you that. I mean, because we know that there are risks.
Spacecraft is go for launch.
Spacecraft is go for launch. We just heard a call for that. What involvement does NASA have when our commercial providers are assessing the risks?
So what's really important about this, too, is recognizing that industry is in the lead in providing these services, so they're the decision makers. So ultimately, what will happen is, you know, as they're making their decisions, we obviously bring great experience along with us, and we will stand shoulder to shoulder with them and support them through the legal process, through contracts and all, but we will bring to bear what we need to support them to make sure that this is successful.
Sure. So it seems like, again, yes, we're fully committed to the CLPS initiative. So what is NASA sending to the moon on future CLPS flights?
So again, super exciting time for NASA. You may or may not realize we have 40 manifested payloads on the CLPS mission. So over the next few years, and that's just for the NASA payloads, right? So you've got industry and academia as well. But focusing on Intuitive Machines, which is our purpose for being here tonight. We're super excited about their efforts here. So they actually have another payload that's going to be launching later this year. They're going to be delivering the Prime 1 drill and spectrometer, which is actually going to support our in situ resource utilization and support a future human presence on the moon.
Sandra, thank you so much. We're excited to see what CLPS can do for NASA and for humanity, really, with what we plan to do with the Artemis program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Go Falcon 9.
That's right.
And go IM-1.
Perfect. All right, so let's send it back to our friends at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California, as they walk us through the final moments of the countdown, and then I will see you guys after launch.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. At T-minus just under 7.5 minutes, all systems are currently a go for an on-time liftoff. Next up, in just about a couple minutes, the structure next to the vehicle, known as the strong back, will begin to retract away from the vehicle. But while we wait for that, let's talk about what it takes to actually get to orbit. In order to get the rocket and payload into any orbit, the rocket not only has to go up really fast, but it also has to go sideways.
Chill has started.
As we ascend, As we ascend, we tilt the engines, and that turns the rocket horizontally. To help demonstrate this concept, an image of firing a cannon from a really high mountain is what you can see there on your screen. The cannonball will arc, and then good old gravity will pull it back down to Earth. As you increase the power, the cannonball will arc and land farther and farther away. Eventually, if you could continue to increase the power, the cannonball will end up in free fall around the Earth. Basically, gravity is pulling down on the cannonball, but it's going so fast that it never hits the ground.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
This arc that constantly misses the Earth is called an orbit. Falcon 9 effectively does the same thing as the cannon in this example, and it provides enough power and horizontal velocity to the second stage carrying the spacecraft, enabling the spacecraft to be placed into orbit around the Earth. Now, you'll be able to see this today by watching the orientation of Falcon 9 after liftoff. The rocket will go straight up until about T plus 10 seconds, at which point we will begin that shift in orientation, gimbaling the engines so that Falcon 9 can go horizontally really fast. So be sure to look out for that after liftoff. Now, again, at T minus 5 minutes and 38 seconds, all systems are currently go for liftoff. The strong back is going to begin retracting away shortly in preparation for that retraction. The clamp arms, which are located just around the second stage, just below the fairing, will begin to open. Once those are fully open, then the TE, or the strong back, can begin to recline away from Falcon 9. And you can see that on your screen, those clamp arms just below the fairing there. Now, the vehicle is nearly fully loaded with propellants, and we did hear a call out that stage 1 prop loading has concluded. We are still loading blocks. And there's that call out that we are beginning that process for that strong back retraction. Propellant loading is continuing on the vehicle and will complete at T minus 2 minutes. The range is currently green and ready to support liftoff. And if for some reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity on Friday, February 16th at 1:12 a.m. Eastern Time.
Strong back retract in progress.
And good call-outs there. The strong back retraction is now in progress. And it will be slow and slight, but we should see those clamp arms begin to open up there. And there you can see it on your screen. Those clamp arms are now opening up. Again, once they are fully open, that will allow the transporter erector, that structure next to the vehicle, to begin to retract away. You should see that TE begin to move away, very slow and slight. But at this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. And there you can see on your screen that TE is now moving away from Falcon 9. Falcon 9 uses 2 propellants, a refined form of kerosene called RP1, or rocket propellant 1, as a fuel, and LOX, or liquid oxygen, as an oxidizer. Now, fire generally needs 3 elements to ignite. That's heat, fuel, and an oxidizing agent, which is usually oxygen. This is what's known as the fire triangle. In our case, the liquid oxygen is chilled below its boiling point so that it has a much greater amount of mass per volume, allowing us to load more of it into the vehicle. And in addition to these 2 propellants, we also use the chemical TTAB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, as an ignition source. The combustion of RP1 and liquid oxygen is what makes the rocket go, but it's the TTAB that sets the match to the propellant mix. And we did hear a call out that stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is complete. Coming up next, in the next couple of minutes at T minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will go into startup. That means that the rocket's autonomous flight computers will have taken over the launch countdown. And at just inside T minus 2 seconds, we will light those Merlin 1D engines for liftoff. The Intuitive Machines payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the vehicle. We are currently green for weather, and the range is ready to support a T0 of 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. And just waiting for the
Stage
call out
2
for
lock slot is
liquid
complete.
oxygen. Right on time. Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. That concludes propellant loading on the vehicle. That means that Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Weather is 90% chance of
Ground gas closeout.
good weather for T0. And we are just about 30 seconds away from Falcon 9 going into startup. Now that propellant loading is complete, we are beginning to vent out the lines, the propellant lines on that transporter rector there, so you can see more of those white clouds around the vehicle. Startup is coming up here in a couple seconds.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Great call out. That means that the internal flight computers have now taken over the launch countdown. We are now just waiting the final go from the launch director.
LD, go for launch.
An excellent call. All systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Intuitive Machines lunar payload.
30 seconds. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Vehicle pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Successfully lifted off from pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, carrying the IM-1 payload. Now, during ascent, we tilt the engines, the technical term being gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally.
That streaming blast of fire up into the skies above Florida. It's 1:06 in the morning, the Falcon 9 rocket, sending what is hoped to be the first private touchdown on the lunar surface. This Odysseus
Max Q.
lander that's looking for water in the craters of eternal darkness down on the lunar south pole. Parts of the moon's surface that get down to minus 230 degrees Celsius. It's hoped that there are billions of gallons of water which will help to take us further into space, support lunar landings in the future and further space exploration. Thomas, it seems as though everything is going well so far.
Very much so, but then SpaceX is pretty good at launching these days. It does it several times a week, so I think we shouldn't be too surprised so far. About 2.25 minutes after launch, the two stages of the rocket will separate. The first stage will come back down to Earth because, of course, the Falcon 9 has a reusable first stage, while the second stage containing the Odysseus spacecraft will continue into orbit. And about 48 minutes after launch, the spacecraft will be released. That cone at the top that we saw, the white cone, will open up like a clam and release the spacecraft. And there are brake wires there which will show the spacecraft that it has been released. And there you go, you can see looks like it could be separating there, and that then wakes up the spacecraft, and then that was the critical stage. If you remember last month, there was the Peregrine mission, which at that point the spacecraft didn't wake up properly. There were problems with the valve and the propellant and so on, causing a massive leak, and that was the end of that mission in effect. So hopefully there's an awful long way to go, but so far looking good.
Well, as the rocket disappears into the inky night above the United States, we will leave its progress. But we'll come back and check in with you, Thomas, in a few minutes' time, a bit later in the programme, to see how things are. But chat a bit more about the proposals to explore the lunar South Pole and the various aspects of space exploration, but for the moment we'll leave it there. It's just coming up to 6:10 in the morning here in the UK, 1:10.
Bearing separation confirmed.
And an excellent view of fairing separation and an amazing view of the IM-1 payload attached to Falcon 9's second stage. Fairing deployment has been confirmed, and we will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel, Bob.
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories.
And some good call-outs there. And in about 3 minutes, there will be a couple more burns on our first stage to prepare for landing at landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral. Again, we've completed the boost back burn on the first stage. That's the first burn of 3. The next burns coming up will be the entry burn and then the landing burn for the first stage vehicle. Now we are at T plus 4 minutes and 17 seconds into today's mission. IM-1 is SpaceX's 14th launch this year, and the lunar lander on board could be the first U.S. moon landing since the Apollo program ended more than 50 years ago. You can see on your screen that the MVAC engine on the second stage is ignited, and we are currently in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns. Around T plus 6 minutes, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn coming up on that first stage vehicle. Again, that is the second of 3 burns. For the entry burn, we will relight 3 of those M1D engines, starting with the center E9 engine, followed shortly afterwards with the E1 and E5 engines. This helps slow the vehicle down as it enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. Now we need to slow down the vehicle to reduce re-entry forces, and that helps us to recover and reuse the first stage. And again, what you're seeing on your screen is a view of the MVAC engine on the second stage. And you can follow the speed and altitude of both vehicles on the bottom left hand of your screen. That is showing the stage 1 telemetry and stage 2 telemetry on your right hand screen. And we are coming up on the entry burn for the first stage vehicle in just about 20 seconds or so. And what you're seeing on your screen on the left-hand side, it's a little dark there, but that is a view from the first stage. And with the entry burn, we should see that screen light up with the engines reignited.
Stage 1, entry burn, start up.
And there you can see that the entry burn has begun with those engines relit.
Stage 1, entry burn, shut down.
Stage 1, FTS.
And a very quick
Both
entry
vehicles
burn
are on nominal
there.
trajectories.
Great call-outs, both vehicles on nominal trajectories. And as I mentioned, that was the second of 3 burns required for this booster to return back down to land. The next and final burn will be the landing burn. That's just a center E9 engine burn, and that helps slow the vehicle down just in time for landing. That's coming up in just about 15 seconds or so.
Stage 1, transonic. Stage 1, landing burn.
And there you
Stage
can
2
see on
from
your
terminal
left-hand
guidance.
screen the landing
Stage
burn
2
has
FTS
begun. Let's
is
watch as Falcon 9. Let's
Stage
watch
1,
as Falcon 9 touches down for landing.
Stage
And a
1,
great
landing burn.
view there. That is we just had confirmation of
Nominal
booster
orbit
landing.
insertion.
We also heard and just heard SECO-1 as well as a confirmation of good orbit for our Falcon 9 second stage carrying our IM-1 payload. Now with that landing, that marks SpaceX's 273rd recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. And with confirmation of good orbit, the mission isn't over yet. Coming up, we do have the second burn of our MVAC engine, or SES-2, on board the second stage around the T plus 41 minute mark, followed by spacecraft separation. So until then, we're going to send it over to Megan at KSC. Megan?
Thank you, Jesse. And if you're just joining us, welcome to the Space Coast of Florida, where we just witnessed live the liftoff of the moon-bound spacecraft and Nova Sea lander called Odysseus. And, you know, we see a lot of launches here from Kennedy Space Center, but it really, truly never gets old. So Odysseus launched on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 39A here at Kennedy Space Center. Intuitive Machines, an American company based in Houston, Texas, developed and built the lunar lander that is carrying, among other things, 6 NASA payloads. And if everything goes as planned, in 8 days, that Nova Sea lander is expected to land on the shadowy south side of the moon. Make sure you stay with us. Our broadcast here on NASA TV will continue through Odysseus's acquisition of signal, which is expected to happen around 1:55 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, before launch, we highlighted 3 of 6 NASA payloads on board the Nova Sea lander. The 4th is the SCALPS payload, which stands for Stereo Cameras for Lunar Plume Surface Studies. It includes 4 cameras at the base of the lunar lander. The images it captures will help scientists understand how landings impact the lunar surface for this mission and future ones.
SCALPS is an array of small cameras that will be placed around the base of a lunar lander and collect imagery during the descent and landing of the vehicle. Using a technique called stereophotogrammetry, we can use those images to reconstruct a 3D shape of the ground. As the lander comes down, its hot engine plumes will interact with the surface. Our cameras will begin acquiring images from before this interaction begins until after the vehicle has landed on the surface. The SCALPS cameras will specifically be looking at the overall crater formation and erosion of the ground due to the rocket plumes. The final stereo images, which will be stored on a small onboard data storage unit, will be transferred to the lander and then downlinked to Earth, where we can use them to reconstruct the overall erosion volume and shape of the ground. With the Artemis program, we plan to establish a sustained lunar exploration and try to land multiple payloads in close proximity to one another. SCALPS data will be a critical part of understanding these phenomena and improving our computational models to inform these future landings.
Let's head back now to Houston, where Josh Marshall is standing by live at Intuitive Machines headquarters with an update, and I'm sure very excited as well, Josh.
Thanks, Megan. With each passing minute, we are closer to receiving the lander's data in Nova Control. Right now, flight controllers are standing by for launch vehicle separation, followed by acquisition of signal. That's when the lander makes first communications contact, sending critical health and flight data into Nova Control. And we want to bring you closer to our Mission Operations Center to experience a few types of information that flight controllers are looking at during the mission. This particular screen is called the Deorbit Descent and Landing, or DDL screen. This screen is primarily used by the mission director and landing system experts. It's used primarily while Nova Sea orbits the moon and through landing. The top right images of the moon are called the lunar tactical view. When the dots turn red, the lander is on the far side of the moon, and green is on the near side. The line is the tail where Nova Sea is, with each dot representing 10 minutes of elapsed time. The acceleration sensed portion of the screen shows raw acceleration values from Nova Sea's inertial measurement unit. This is used a lot during burn maneuvers and is a more robust way of measuring acceleration over time with the ability to look back at what has happened. For some reason, flight controllers have lost data. Finally, the column on the right is a received, accepted, edited, and failed pre-checked, or RAFE chart for short. When each of these lines are on top of each other, that's a good indication that Nova Sea's navigation system is in good health. That's because every measurement Nova Sea makes must be received, accepted, edited, or failed pre-check. The failure is a possible outlier of data that the lander's computer automatically knows is bad information. Collectively, the DDL screen is one of many data displays that flight controllers are monitoring to successfully navigate Nova-C to the lunar surface. It's no small feat, and the tireless effort of our entire Intuitive Machines team has brought us to this moment, standing by for launch vehicle separation and acquisition of signal in approximately 40 minutes. Until then, we'll toss back to Megan with more on the challenges that lie ahead of the IM-1 mission.
Yeah, we've been honest about it. You know how difficult it is to get to the moon. We haven't done it in more than 50 years, but the CLIPS initiative is going to change that. NASA and American companies who have teamed up to explore the moon know a lot of research needs to happen before astronauts head back to the lunar surface. In the end, the rewards outweigh the risks.
Landing on the moon is hard. We're going back. Under this Artemis program, we're going to be sending humans to the moon for the first time since Apollo. So ahead of humans, we want to get up as much science exploration and technology experiments as possible.
So CLIPS starts facilitating a lot of the early science, the things we want to learn before we even send humans. CLIPS stands for Commercial Lunar Payload Services, CLPS.
The services part is the key element. Ordinarily, when NASA delivers a payload to the surface of the moon, they do it with a commercial partner, but NASA controls the building of the vehicle. Now, we're buying the service of delivery of our lunar payloads to the surface of the moon.
It is a delivery service, akin to a delivery service that you'd have here on Earth.
NASA will provide payloads to a commercial company. They decide how to get it to the moon. They have to develop their own lander, but they also have to manage the entire end-to-end mission.
It's meant to provide affordable, rapid, frequent access to the lunar surface through American companies.
We're funding different companies.
We have commercial companies that are competing to win task orders to deliver our payloads to the surface of the moon.
One of the goals when we started CLIPS was to help establish a lunar economy.
Somebody has to do it first, and then it becomes commercially available. Then they're able to crank them up. Then they're able to make it more affordable. And so the lunar surface is just the next frontier for a commercial environment.
But we had to acknowledge up front, all the way through the highest levels of the agency leadership, that some of them will fail. These missions may not be as successful as a traditional NASA mission.
We have accepted the risk that going through this innovative approach with these commercial companies, that there could be some failures. Some of them are new companies. None of them have ever successfully landed on the surface of the moon. So they're going to learn lessons.
We need to give our vendors the opportunity to learn.
And so that'll help ultimately buy down our risk as these companies learn, okay, what does it take to actually build up the lunar lander, integrate payloads, get to the lunar surface and land safely.
They've been able to demonstrate that they have very, very good technical depth and the ability to design and execute missions. We're willing to take more shots on goal. And we aren't risking human lives. And in the big picture, if we're flying missions at 1/10 of the cost of a NASA mission, and we fail 2 of them, we still get 8 missions for that same price.
Even with 1 or 2 or 3 failures, this is still a very economical proposition. It's a risk posture which is more risk tolerant than NASA is accustomed to. There's not a single one of these companies that's willing to bet their mission on a coin toss. Every one of them is doing what they can in order to have the most successful mission possible. But the important thing to realize is that risk tolerant does not mean risky. And the rewards are a long-term ability to get payloads to the moon inexpensively, frequently, and rapidly.
We want science, so we can then put more of our resources on even more science, exploration, and technology payloads and get more of a return on investment when we get to the moon.
CLIPS provides tremendous benefit across the scientific and economic communities.
So there's a lot we'd like to learn about the moon to help human habitation and prepare us for missions to Mars and beyond.
So the moon is the first step.